Before we go any further, let's quickly reset the journey. Everything started in Mesopotamia, the land between two unpredictable rivers. Those rivers made farming possible, but they also made survival uncertain. To survive, humans had to organize. That organization slowly turned into cities, rules, and power, demonstrate structures that had never existed before. In the earlier parts, we saw how order became more important than comfort, how control became more valuable than freedom, and how systems were created to keep society stable. Written rules appeared. Authority became visible. Belief systems reinforced obedience. By the end of these chapters, Mesopotamia was no longer just a place. It was a system strong enough to build civilization and rigid enough to create consequences. Now the question is not how civilization began, but what happens when such a system is pushed too far. The earliest people to shape Mesopotamia were the Sumerians. They were not conquerors. They were builders. Across the southern plains, cities like Uruk, Ur, and Lagash rose independently, each with its own ruler, its own god, and its own identity. What made the Sumerians extraordinary was not unity, but invention. Writing emerged here, not for stories, but for records. Irrigation turned rivers into lifelines. Mathematics, timekeeping, and astronomy slowly took shape. But the same independence that allowed creativity also created weakness. These cities fought each other constantly. There was no shared defense, no common authority. Sumerian civilization was advanced, but fragile, and fragility invites conquest. That conquest came with a man named Sargon of Akkad. Around 2334 BCE, Sargon did something no one had done before. He united multiple Sumerian cities under a single ruler. Different cultures, languages, and traditions were now controlled from one center. This was not just conquest. This was the birth of empire. The Akkadian Empire introduced centralized power. A standing army replaced local militias. Orders flowed from the top down. Trade expanded, administration improved, and Mesopotamia entered a new political age. But empire came with a price. Holding such a large territory required constant force. Rebellions never stopped. Environmental stress weakened agriculture. When leadership faltered, the system collapsed. The Akkadian Empire fell apart under pressure it could not sustain. After Akkad's collapse, Mesopotamia briefly returned to its roots. Under the rulers of Ur, Sumerian culture experienced a revival. Administration became highly organized. Taxes were recorded. Labor was managed carefully. For a moment, order returned without conquest. But this revival lacked strength. Surrounded by migrating tribes and external pressures, it could not last. Once again, Mesopotamia stood exposed. Power shifted north, and Babylon entered the story. Babylon's rise was different. It was not built purely on military dominance, but on control through law. Under Hammurabi, rules were carved into stone and placed where everyone could see them. Justice became predictable, though not equal. Society stabilized, but hierarchy deepened. Babylon proved that civilization could be controlled without constant war, but it also showed that rigid systems depend heavily on strong rulers. When Hammurabi died, his successors could not hold the structure together. Babylon weakened and fell to outside forces. Then came the most feared empire Mesopotamia had ever known. The Assyrians did not seek love or loyalty. They ruled through fear. Their armies were professional, their weapons advanced, and their punishments brutal. Resistance was crushed publicly to discourage rebellion before it began. For a time, this strategy worked. Roads connected vast territories. Communication improved. Control was absolute. But terror creates enemies everywhere. Constant war exhausted resources. Hatred fueled rebellions. When Assyria weakened, its enemies united. In 6 to 12 BCE, the Assyrian capital fell, and with it, the empire collapsed almost overnight. Babylon returned one final time. Under Nebuchadnezzar II, the city was rebuilt into a symbol of power and culture. Massive walls, grand temples, and legendary architecture defined this era. Mesopotamia briefly regained its confidence, but this revival lacked military depth. When a new power arrived from the east, Babylon could not resist. In 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great of Persia captured Babylon without destroying it. This moment marked the end of Mesopotamian independence. The Persians ruled differently. They allowed local customs, respected religions, and governed through administration rather than fear. Mesopotamia became part of a larger world, no longer the center of innovation, but still a vital piece of civilization. From here onward, control passed to outsiders, Persians, Greeks under Alexander, and later Roman influence. The age of Mesopotamian empires was over. But Mesopotamia itself did not disappear. Its ideas lived on. Law, bureaucracy, empire, timekeeping, and urban life all survived long after its cities faded. What Mesopotamia ultimately left behind was not just civilization, but a lesson. Civilization is powerful, but delicate. Systems can build greatness, and systems can destroy it.